Hello, writing community. I thought I would do something a little different and share with you a little bit of a never to be published book that I wrote back in high school. I thought I was being super clever and wrote a sequel to Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park and the Lost World. In reality, it's just fan fiction. Um, I stored it on floppy disks, which do not survive long term. And my dog Cooper recently destroyed the last surviving paper copy that I had. I did find some electronic chapters on a hard drive recently, but I fear that Cooper had it right in trying to rid the world of the material. But after a glass of wine and a hat, because I haven't done my hair in a month, I thought I would share a little blurb for you, and it's truly terrible. Um, I'm going to start in the middle of a scene, the prologue, which takes place after the introduction, because I needed both an introduction and a prologue. And all I need to know is that there's two guards doing their job in a guardhouse. They're playing war with one another, because that's the only card game that I know the rules to. And they hear a noise outside. So their names are Hart and Lesson. So one of the guys flips down cards to prepare for war, and then he hears a noise as well. It wasn't a scream, though. Rather, it was breathing. A long inhale and a slow exhale. Another breathing cycle, over and over, too slow to be human, and it was just outside the guardhouse. Lesson's face was frozen and had just broken out in sweat. He was listening. Hart reached for his handgun, which was in its holster on the counter, just out of reach. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a small figure jump into the air, eclipsing the setting sun, and crash through the window. His instincts told him to freeze in his chair when the figure landed on the table. Broken glass flew through the room. The light, a single bulb in the center of the room, was swaying back and forth as the figure's head bumped against it. Hart recognized it immediately. Roughly 2 feet tall and 6 feet long, the Dromaeosaurus stood on its hind legs, the muscles in its arms twitching in tension in front of its body. The mouth of its large, narrow head was wide open, revealing large, razor-sharp teeth. Its tail was still swinging through the broken window of the small room. The man's eyes frantically swept over the Dromaeosaurus. He shuddered as they worked their way down the thick and muscular legs and settled on the 4-inch switchblade claws on each foot. What seemed like minutes must have been only a second, because as soon as the animals, apparently there's plural now, landed on the table, Lesson, whose feet were still propped up on the table, tried to turn out of his chair and get his own gun. Hart wanted to yell no, but he knew better. The dinosaur, because there's only one again, the dinosaur reacted with amazing speed to Lesson's movement. It turned towards him, its tail entering the room completely and smashing against Hart, throwing him to the ground. He heard the other man scream, but didn't look up. Instead, he started crawling to the counter where his own gun was. Hearing a crash, Hart looked behind him, and between the table legs he saw his partner land on the floor, the Dromaeosaurus on top of him. The animal lifted one of its clawed feet and easily ripped open Lesson's stomach. Then it shoved its snout into the spilling intestines in a feeding frenzy. Lesson was still screaming. Fighting down a wave of nausea, he lifted his hand to the counter and fell around for his gun. Feeling the leather of the holster, he grabbed it and brought it down to his body, hugging it as if a child might with a puppy. Because that's really a good, description there. All of a sudden, as if just noticing the other man's presence in the room, the animal turned and faced him. A low, menacing hiss escaped its open jaws. "Oh, shit!" Hart screamed, and he started fumbling with the case, trying to get it open, but his trembling fingers wouldn't snap open the button. The dinosaur leaped at him, but stumbled over Lesson's body. It crashed into the table, knocking it over. Because crashing to a table wouldn't just do that. Hart was cursing repeatedly, trying to get the case open. His eyes looked frantically around the room, first to see how his progress with the holster was going, second to see where the bastard of an animal had gone. After a moment, Hart began to wonder if the Dromaeosaur was still there. Lesson had ceased making any noises. If it weren't for the view, it would seem like nothing had happened. He heard a snap, and looked down. And looking down, he saw that he had opened the case. He felt relief when he saw the shining metal of the gun. Looking back up, however, was a completely different feeling. The dinosaur had leaped up from behind the table, reaching the ceiling, and was now falling right on top of Hart. In one swift movement, he rolled over and pulled the handgun out of the holster. When he knew that the animal wasn't going to land on top of him, he flipped over and aimed right at where he had been, and pulled the trigger until there was nothing more to shoot. He thought he heard the animal scream, but soon realized it was his own voice, stifling the scream. He sat frozen, waiting for nothing, waiting for something, anything to happen. Nothing did. Eventually, he opened his eyes and surveyed the room. It was a disaster. The glass that belonged to the window was everywhere. The table was knocked across the room. Hart's body was lying on the floor, and the raptor was lying still and silent in the place Hart was sitting just moments before. He quickly got up and reloaded the gun. Then he checked on his friend. Lesson was dead.